Everyone, before we call the meeting to order, I think we have a special group here this morning of young men, young women that we need to recognize, and I'll call on Councilman Ernest Brooks for that.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Members of the audience, I would like to introduce a group of young men that are part of the 100 Black Men of Tennessee mentoring program. This is part of the family program, forming an alliance to provide mentors to influence and lead our youth. The program utilizes a one-to-one and group mentoring process to provide guidance, support, and encouragement for middle school young men. These mentees are expected to participate in the program from middle school through high school, and if they do that successfully, they will become part of the 21st Century Scholars Program, which will provide college scholarships and tuition for them. They are here today as a part of my city government workshop for youth, and we would like to recognize them at this time. I believe we have a couple young men here, and more are expected a little bit later this afternoon. If they would stand, we could recognize them. And Mayor, very quickly, if I could, I have another special guest here. My uncle, Harold Brooks, is in from California, and he is sitting with Ms. Henning. If he would stand just very quickly. Very good to see him. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, sure. We'll call the August 7th, 2012 meeting of Jackson City Council to order. We'll call on Councilman Pepperbray for invocation and pledge. If you would, please rise.
Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for all the blessings that you give to us. We want to thank you for this another beautiful day. Thank you for our family and friends. Thank you for being you. Thank you for our military. Please lead, guide, and direct us in everything we do, especially trying to be more helpful to others.
Yes.
These things we ask in our precious name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anita, I think you can show that all council members are present. Item 3 and item 4 is approval of the minutes of the July 3rd, 2012 City Council meeting. Council received a copy of those minutes, and if there are no corrections or additions, we'll just declare those approved. Item 5 is invitation of public comment, and if there's anyone present who would like to be heard under new business, once we get to that item, if you would please raise your hand and indicate that you'd like to be heard, I'll be happy to call on you. We have one special recognition this morning, and I'm going to ask our Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Tony Black, if he would come up and acknowledge some very special people.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Hope, will you, Mr. Bond, come up? And as they make their way up, let me say this is the group Jackson Area-Wide Soccer Association, and we've had a long-standing relationship with them that goes back since their inception of over 20-plus years. They have been an organization that came together in the early 90s to develop the growth and spread of soccer in this area. Let me say that the soccer program with the Recreation Parks Department, without any doubt, is one of our most successful recreation programs. We do 2 seasons, and we have between 800 to 1,000 young people playing in our soccer program, and it's due to the hard work of the people at Jaws. Not only do they attempt to grow the sport, but they're the kind of people you love to have as friends. They also invest money. They give you money. And at a time when budgets are tight and recreation departments across the country are struggling to do things, this organization, I'd like to share with you some of the things they've done over the past 10 years. and then we'll talk about what they've done recently. They've donated $25,000 for the fence at Kate Campbell Park, $10,000 for North Park, $10,000 for the renovation of the Hollywood soccer field, which is used by the school system, $7,500 for seed and fertilizer, $15,000 during the 2010 and 2011 for field maintenance, and purchase of goals if necessary. Also, we met with the mayor recently, and they had committed $100,000 for the lighting, additional lighting and better lighting at North Park, but the mayor is spearheading and looking at us, really looking at trying to develop a large soccer complex. This is a growing sport in this area. We have trouble with fields for practice and tournaments, with juggling different private groups around to use our facilities. And so we're looking to eventually try to purchase lands and have a soccer complex that's compatible to some that are across the state, where we can bring more people in who bring their dollars here to spend for tourism. But why we're here today is that they have just recently committed, over the next 3 years, they've committed $25,000 to the upkeep and maintenance of Kate Campbell Park and in any general maintenance needs that we have for our Recreation Parks Department, for our soccer fields. And in recognition of that, they will give another $25,000 in the year 2015. They've just committed $25,000 the 1st of July this year. And so with that, we felt it very befitting that we recognize this group, and we'd like to present you with a plaque from the City of Jackson. Here's what it reads, Pope. The City of Jackson and the Jackson Recreation Park Department recognizes Jackson Area-Wide Soccer, JAWS, for your outstanding contribution to the Jackson Recreation and Parks Department soccer program, presented August 7th, 2012. And with that, Pope, we really, truly thank you all for your support.
Thank you. I got involved in soccer some 20-something years ago when my daughter and son started playing, and we were playing on fields that really weren't much more than just cow pastures, as Susan can attest to. Thanks to her hard work in bringing people together, and thanks to the City of Jackson and to the Parks and Recreation Department, we've got some fields here in Jackson, and we've got facilities here in Jackson that we all can be proud of. We're just hoping that everybody can work together and we can try to help develop and grow soccer where everybody here in Jackson can be proud of the facilities and proud of what we do have to offer people. Thank you.
And we are indeed grateful for that commitment for young people in our city. Item 7, under first readings. Item 1 is consideration of the ordinance to rezone property located on the north side of Okina Drive, just west of Pipkin Road, from RS Single Family Residential District to RS PRD, Single Family Residential Planned Residential Development District containing 48.75 acres, more or less, submitted by HTK Properties Limited Liability.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
This item was presented to the Planning Commission at their last meeting, and they are recommending this to you. As stated in the description, this rezoning is to accommodate a new planned residential development. There's going to be approximately 19 lots. They range in size about 2 acres apiece. This is going to be kind of laid out in a rustic feel in terms of it's not going to be your traditional curb and gutter and sidewalks type of urban cross-section development. It's going to be more rustic, and the houses are going to be in the 3,500 square feet heated range. So these are houses that are compatible with the houses that are around it, and the Planning Commission has reviewed this and has recommended approval of it to you.
Okay, thank you, Stan. Any questions from Stan? If not, this is an ordinance on first reading, and we have a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance on first reading, you would let yourself be known. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 2 is consideration of an ordinance to close and abandon a section of Wilshire Drive running north to a dead end at the parking garage for the West Tennessee Surgery Center, submitted by Jackson Madison County General Hospital.
Again, you have the materials pertinent to this request. This is a part of the overall development of this area by West Tennessee Healthcare. This is a continuation of the sections that they are abandoning of the existing Wilshire Drive to accommodate the newly aligned Wilshire Drive. And this particular section that you see here basically run dead ends into a new parking garage that's going to be developed. And so this just continue the development pattern that we've already started. You can see here where the newly aligned Wilshire would be here, and this is the section we're talking about in this area. So the Planning Commission has reviewed this and is recommending approval of it to you.
Okay, any questions of council? First reading of this ordinance.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Before we vote, again, we'll have to have a public hearings necessary, so I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience who'd like to be, or like to speak on this ordinance, either in support of or in opposition to. If you'd let it be known. Seeing none, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 3 under first reading is consideration of amendment to Title 10, Chapter 2, Section 10-202 of the Animal Control Ordinance. We'll call on Councilmember Scott Conger for that ordinance.
Good morning, council.
Morning.
We discussed Thursday, if you all remember a few months ago, we had the issue with the waterfowl on Campbell Lake. And in the existing animal ordinance, it said it would not be allowed within 200 linear feet of any residence, place of business, or industry. We just added a line, with the exception, the restriction shall not prohibit approval by the health officer of keeping waterfowls on public or community development lakes such as Campbell Lake. So that's where we're at, to allow the geese and the ducks at Campbell Lake to stay there within legal bounds, and there won't be any further problems with the residents and not having lawful waterfowl on the lake.
Okay, we have the ordinance on the table for discussion. City Attorney Teresa Luna is here if the council has any questions as to this particular
I have a
amendment.
quick question. I have a
Sure.
quick question, if I could,
Sure.
Mayor. And Councilman, you may be able to answer this. This will apply to all lakes in the city?
All development lakes, yes, with the approval of the health officer.
Okay.
Health officer in this case has been designated to be Dr. Tony Emerson of the Jackson Madison County Health Department to make those judges as to it being a health hazard. Any additional discussion?
Move the approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Let's go ahead on this amendment and open it up for a public hearing. If there's anyone here who would like to be heard in speaking in support of or in opposition to the passage of this amendment to the Animal Control Ordinance, please raise your hand. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Your second readings, item 8.
First reading. Also on one.
Yes. Let's back up one, if you would. Number 4, under first reading, is consideration of an ordinance to reduce the number of false alarms in the city of Jackson. Captain Corley, Chief, Teresa, any of you all want to come up and kind of very briefly describe the ordinance and basically what its intent is? We'll ask the council if there are any questions of any of these people here. And we'll let either one of you go first. It wants to go first. Captain Corley?
I'll go ahead, sir.
All right.
Good morning. As we discussed Thursday about the background behind this, there's several magnitude of alarm calls that we get, and the fire department as well, every year. 99% of those things are false. They're by malfunction alarms or operator error, and that's what we're here to address with this ordinance. The basic steps of the ordinance are that the ordinance would require any alarm owner to register the alarm with the city by a form that would be available by website or at the police department or city hall as well. There's no permit fee for this application. There's going to be a 6-month grace period. If the ordinance passes, a 6-month grace period where no one's going to be fined for not registering their alarm. We're encouraging the registration of the alarm. However, after that period of time, if the police or the fire department responds and it's determined to be a false alarm and the alarm has not been registered, there's a $25 fine for failing to register. After 2 false alarms in a permit year, the third and subsequent false alarm would be subject to a $25 fine as well. Now, I'd like to point out that under state law, every alarm monitoring company has to do what's called double verification, where they have to contact the alarm owner or a secondary person on their list before calling dispatch to say this is an active alarm, which alleviates the response from public safety. And that's not considered a false alarm. It's considered a false alarm if the police department or the fire department responds and there's been an operator error. There's something that is controllable by the alarm user and it's continuing to go off. In lieu of paying a fine, there's also in the ordinance a alarm awareness class that will be offered for first-time offenders on that third or subsequent alarm. If they choose to not pay the fine and want to attend, we encourage that because the education part of this is huge. A lot of times, alarm owners just do not know how to operate the alarm properly or can't recognize when something's malfunctioning. And the alarm industries, we're going to hopefully partner with them to help teach this class and make people a little bit more aware of what causes false alarms. So that's also part of the ordinance. The cost factor involved in this is another issue. Not only are we taking public safety personnel away from other duties when we go to respond to false alarms, there's a cost factor involved, manpower and fuel and other things. We're repeatedly going to those false alarms. Again, 99% of our alarm calls are false. It represents more than 10% of what we do right now. And so the cost that's costing the city or the taxpayers is pretty high. So we're trying to alleviate that as well and be better stewards with that use of money and also our equipment and resources. So that's where we are with the ordinance.
May
Okay.
also just indicate that the fire department personnel here, they have, you see the numbers as far as false alarms that they answer and the cost of 4 engines and 16 people or 16 firefighters having to answer those calls. So if you have any questions for either PD or fire department. Any questions, council? Any comment?
I have one. How long do they have, Captain, to register their alarms?
But we're going to start actively, upon passage, we're going to start actively trying to get everyone registered. 6-month time grace period where you would not be fined for not registering your alarm. So we'll have a 6-month grace
So
period.
later on down the road, if somebody puts in an alarm, how are they gonna know?
Again, we're going to partner with the alarm community
Yes, sir.
here, and so they're going to help get the word out when they install a new alarm to advise the customer that there is no ordinance and that they have to register.
Okay. What this does in registering, we were discussing it a little there Thursday, was the fact that, from my understanding, this enables you all to know who the contact people are and where you all can make a contact if it's necessary. Is that
That's correct. You can't imagine how much time that is involved when we respond to a business or a residential alarm, and the contact information that they provided their monitoring service is outdated and old and not functional. We spend a great amount of time trying to locate a business owner or someone who can respond to that business or residence to shut the alarm off or make sure everything's safe. It's time that's wasted, and we'd like to use that time better. So we do need the application to provide that information of who to contact. It also will provide us information, particularly like with businesses that may have hazardous materials inside, for the fire department, and for our personnel to know that there may be something inside that we need to be cognizant of, a medical patient that may need assistance, so those type of things.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I had several questions, but I think you've answered most of them. I had just a couple of scenarios, and I guess one for you, Chief.
Okay.
What about the family that goes on vacation? They arm their security system. The kids, the grandkids, somebody's coming to feed the dog, feed the cat, water the flowers, and they forget when they come in to disarm it, and you get a call. Is that one strike against them? Does that go down?
Well, there's a possibility, and I'm familiar with this because I stand as that type of individual for my mother-in-law when she goes on vacation. So therefore, when she's leaving, she tells me her alarm code. She also tells me a password that's provided by the alarm company should you not get the alarm deactivated, because that's what the second call verification is about. You'll call the residents, you give that, and then that negates the response by law enforcement or by fire department personnel, because they then can verify that it was just a user error.
Right. And I think that's fine, but I think the public needs to be aware that if you go on vacation, you make sure whoever is coming in,
Absolutely.
knows absolutely. We just need to make them aware of that.
And that will be in our
And-
educational
And that'll be in
component
that.
of it.
That's great. Okay, and then the other little scenario, I think you've answered this. If a fire alarm, if you are called because I'm so crazy, the batteries are not up to date in the smoke detector or something, and I call you because my smoke detector's going off, and you come out there, is that one strike? Because I think it's important that you come out there, because sometimes little old ladies live by themselves, and that thing starts beeping, and they just don't feel safe, and they call you, so.
Well, I think I can go back to what Captain Corley said about that direct relationship we want to have with the alarm industry. Just recently, I was in Nashville with the alarm industry of Tennessee, and also the National Alarm Industry Coalition was there. And what was asked of the alarm industry themselves, knowing that you have these individuals and knowing that timeline of battery usage, to actually just start sending batteries to your owners. In other words, your people who have the alarm systems, to help alleviate those situations. So in those type of relationships between the end user and the person that's provided the alarm system, we hope to be able to alleviate a lot of those situations.
Okay, but I really didn't ask it so that it was clear enough.
It would still be a false alarm.
If they don't have a security system, but they call you and say, my smoke alarm is going off, and then you get there, is that a false alarm?
No, ma'am,
Or is this just security systems?
That's just security systems, and it has nothing to do with health alarms either, with
Yeah.
what people might wear
Right.
around their necks or
I
whatever.
think that's just been a misunderstanding with my constituents.
Yes, ma'am, it has nothing to
And
do
the little
with
old
your
lady
smoke
was worried, if
detector.
I hear something out there and think somebody's coming in,
Chief,
and they
on
come
up,
out and
you
nobody's
might be
here, is
able
that a
to-
problem?
You might be able to help with the smoke alarm situation.
Good morning.
Good
Morning.
The single-station smoke alarms that aren't connected to any system at all, we're glad, we always have, we've come out, we'll change those batteries ourselves. We will normally try to keep some on all the pieces of equipment. Those would not be considered false alarm at all.
That's great, and I knew that, but I wanted everybody to hear you say that, because they were misunderstanding it. And you definitely did address the main issues that some of my folks had, because they thought there was gonna be a fee for the permit, and they said, small businesses don't need any more taxes, they're calling it, but there's no fee for that. And clearly, our intent is not to generate revenue for the city. That's not the intent. We hope that nobody ever has to pay $25. We're trying to eliminate a problem that's gonna make the fire department and the police department more effective.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
good morning.
Morning.
Your definition of what constitutes a false alarm, also give me the correlation between false alarm and 911 calls, and the old theory of the boy who cried wolf.
Right. Obviously, a 911 call would be a separate matter entirely, and I'd like to reiterate what the chief has said in prior meetings. We, and the fire department is the same way, we're never not going to come. We always will respond. and we will respond to 911 calls. We will respond to the alarm call. Our hope with this is just to reduce those false alarms that are created by operator error or malfunctions that can be corrected by the alarm company or the owner themselves. So a 911 call is going to generate a response every time. Once that double verification happens by the alarm monitoring service and they contact dispatch, we're coming every time.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilman.
I guess some of my concerns are relative to how burdensome this possibly could be for our citizens. I think in theory, it's a wonderful idea, and I surely think that we should try to reduce the number of false alarms. I guess my question is, do we necessarily need the civil penalties to enforce this? And how important is it? We understand, as Councilwoman Foote said, that it is not a revenue-generating exercise. So how important is it to have those penalties in there?
Well, we're really only asking the citizens or the alarm owners to do two things. One is to maintain their alarms in a proper operating manner and operate them using the codes or whatever properly, such that we reduce the alarm number of calls that are just mistakes. The second thing is to fill out a form, and those are the only two things we're asking of the citizens. So the third and subsequent that are subject to a fine, those, we're hoping that you get the two free false alarms will be the wake-up call. You're having a problem, it's either by operator error or by malfunctioning system, let's get that corrected. We want to work together with you to get it corrected. It's those that we have, unfortunately, some that just don't care. And they know we're gonna come, and so they're just going to continue to let it happen. So I made the analogy the other day, and I'll bring that up again about the 911 calls that you say crying wolf or just calling for no reason, that it's not an emergency. That happens. We have calls that they call for, it's not an emergency reason, they call 911 because they know we're gonna come. Same thing kind of happens with these false alarms. The business or the homeowner may know they have a malfunctioning alarm, but they're not taking the steps to correct it. And we respond over and over and over and over. And these officers and these fire personnel could be doing something else that they, be much more productive than responding to a false alarm.
Councilman Brooks, of the 790 alarms that we were able to identify that correlate to this 8,275 alarm responses in 2011, over 55% of those had more than 2 false alarms. In fact, 80 of those were in the double digits. I found one particular location. We had 11. There were 11 that had false alarms over 20 times each. There were literally some that had false alarms over 30 times each, and then some that had false alarms over 40 times each. So, we've got some just flagrant issues out there.
Chief, of those numbers, how many of those false alarms were residences versus commercial businesses?
I wasn't given the names of the location. I was just given a total number and told how many actually were double digits. So I couldn't respond to that question as to resident versus
In a general
business.
review, Captain, you referred that, or suggested that many, if not most, of the false alarms were businesses.
We have a large number of both, an extremely large number of both. The businesses may outweigh the residents by some percentage, but there's a large number of both.
And how important is it, you talked about working with the alarm companies, how important is that to this entire exercise?
It's pretty important. I'm hopeful that they're going to be part of our awareness class. They're much more knowledgeable about how alarm systems work, and getting them on board with that would be great. Also with the permitting and just the general knowledge of how and helping the citizens or the business owners learn how to reduce alarms. The coalition, the industry itself in the alarm industry is supportive of these ordinances across the country because they do help the industry and they also help the municipalities.
Do you have an idea how many alarm companies are here in Jackson?
I don't have an exact number.
They don't have computers.
I would say it'd probably be in the over 10
Okay.
that operates specifically in Jackson.
Okay, and Chief, I think that we had talked about some constituents having problems with their carrier relative to the people that they list to call. And I think through this process, that will help some of those citizens with this as well.
That's what we're hoping. Yeah.
That's what we're hoping for, and in fact, it's kind of ironic when you stop and think about alarm systems. Actually, the alarm companies themselves, or the alarm industry, one's referred to as the Security Industry and Alarm Coalition. That's the national organization, and then we have the Tennessee Electronic Security Association. They were the ones who developed the ordinance. So we didn't go out and develop this ordinance on our own. Actually, the alarm industry themselves says, we can do a better job, and we'd like to submit this ordinance to prove that, because we'll work with our people that are using that and do a lot better.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, I have a question. Who makes the determination on the false alarm, say if a potential burglar comes in and jars the door and then the police officer responds? Does he make that determination, or does it have to go to the appeals process for it to determine that it wasn't a false alarm?
The officers on the scene will make a initial determination, just like the fire department will make an initial determination, was this smoke that actually set this alarm off? And if so, that's not a false alarm, because it's working the way it should. Same way with the burglar alarm. If it's functioning the way it should, then it's not a false alarm. If it's something that is correctable, user error, malfunction stuff, that's when the officer will determine that it's a false alarm.
Thank you.
If I might add in here, this may address some of your other issues that I've heard you bring up. This was really meticulously drafted with certain scenarios in mind, particularly with elderly people in mind, because they have alarm systems and things happen with elderly. For example, in the definition section under false alarms, there's a lot of wording that protects the homeowner or the business owner, but particularly elderly people. For example, if my mother falls as she's going into her house and she can't get her alarm untriggered and the police are called, was it a false alarm? No, there was not a burglary, there was not a fire, but yet there was an extenuating circumstance that caused that to happen that was sort of beyond her control. And so that would not be considered a false alarm because there was something that happened other than just negligence or a mistake. So those situations, and also because you can call and retract it before officers or fire department are sent out, there should be a lot that the homeowner and the business owner can do to avoid any kind of penalty under this ordinance.
What I see as the big problem is registering, I don't know how in the world you're going to educate everybody that has a security system to make sure they're registered. That's going to be a huge hurdle. And so I think you'll generate a lot of funds after 6 months because they have to register within 6 months. Is that correct? Or they pay a fine?
By the ordinance, they do. And I'd like to add what Teresa just said. There's a lot of these components. It was meticulously drafted. There's appeal processes in these as well. So if someone receives a fine, either for failing to register or for what the officer determined or the fire department determined to be a false alarm on scene, there's an administrative appeal option. And then if they need to appeal further, there's also goes through an environmental court through Judge Anderson. So there's steps along the way. Just like what you mentioned with failing to register, we have discretion in this ordinance that we can apply that to. So if it's a day outside the 6 months, we can say, hey, you need to register, as opposed to issuing the fine. So it's not that it's a mandate. It's this. We're trying to change some behavior. We're trying to get some education out there so we can reduce this and use our manpower and resources better elsewhere.
Could I make a suggestion then? Could the security companies that have sold these things to people be required to let them know? I think the person should get a letter from someone telling them, you have a security system and you're not registered. You're not going to know that. Only the security companies will know that.
Well,
if we could somehow get that in there, so that
part
there
of
would be
the,
no reason for them not to register and say, I didn't know. I didn't read it in the paper. I didn't, see it on TV, so I didn't know.
we're trying to address that as well. Part of the implementation process we're working on now is that when officers or fire department personnel respond, if there's no one there, or if they're there, we're going to discuss it with them. If there's no one there, we're going to have notices that we can leave that say you've had an alarm, you're not registered, or this is the number one alarm whatever this year, this is how you register and the directions of that route. So we've got things in place that we're going to have in place to help educate that.
Okay, I think that clears it up, because what you're saying is that just because they didn't register doesn't mean they're going to pay a fine, right?
Not the first 6 months, but beyond that, failing to register is
So
subject to a
so
fine.
it does
So
mean
we'll leave
that.
them a notice saying, this is how you do it.
So they're going to have to get somebody to come out there for a false alarm for you to be able to tell them that.
For us to understand that
That's
they're
gonna be the-
unregistered. Does that make sense? If,
It's-
we'll know who's registered, but if we respond to an unregistered alarm, that's when
That's
that
what I'm
notice-
talking about.
Yes.
So it will take a false alarm to get you out there. What if for 2 years they don't have that occur and then it occurs? Is it going to be more than?
No.
Okay,
No.
okay. It's not going to be yearly for every
No.
year and, okay, all right.
But so we're clear, it is a mandate, right?
Yes. Yes.
You said it wasn't. It is a mandate.
No, it is a
Yeah,
mandate,
right.
that, well, there's a 6-month grace period,
But you are mandated if you have a
yes, to register your
alarm,
alarm.
to
Yes.
register with the city.
Yes, sir.
I think y'all have the numbers from other cities who have implemented this. We're not exactly a trailblazer on putting this ordinance together. I think it's just an effort to create a situation for our PD and our fire department people to in PD's case, to patrol the neighborhoods, retail centers, shopping centers, and do things which hopefully will be more constructive than chasing down false alarms. Any other questions of council? Okay, we need to have a public hearing. This is ordinance on first reading, so if there's anyone present who would like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance on first reading, if you would indicate that now. Seeing none, hearing none, is there a motion? Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Come on up. If y'all would allow this individual to. Yes, ma'am, come on up. If you'd be kind enough to identify yourself this morning.
Good morning,
Good morning.
and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Martha White. I don't have a false alarm, but my 94-year-old mother-in-law does. And I'm speaking in opposition to the ordinance. A few nights ago, her daughter went to the hospital, and she went to the door after they had left to close the door to make sure it was locked, and the alarm went off. She didn't know how to stop it. She didn't know what to do to get it off. So if this ordinance had been enforced, she would have been fined $25 for an incident that she had no control over. So I think it's unfair to charge the customer for the $25 when there's a malfunction of their false alarm. Charge the people that made it for selling a malfunctioning false alarm to a customer. So I'm in my opposition because I think it's an unfair ordinance to me as a customer for an alarm that's malfunctioning, not working right, and I don't know what to do about it except to call the company and say, come and fix it. But yet you're gonna charge me $25.
Ms. Lena, can you, on that particular scenario, could you?
Yes, if I understand your concern, if someone was taken to the hospital and someone else went back to check the door, and in checking the door, it triggered the alarm to go off. Under the definition of what a false alarm is, that would not be considered a false alarm because there were extenuating like a medical emergency that caused that whole scenario to occur. And most likely that would not be considered a false alarm under the definition in this ordinance. Now, I think you also were addressing if there's a malfunctioning alarm from the alarm company. In that case, the alarm company generally calls the police department or fire department and says, no, we don't have an alarm here. You know, they stop the officers or the fire department before there's a response. And in that case, there would not be a false alarm either. Of course, then it gives the alarm company the chance to correct the problem. And what we have seen, we did address this as we looked at some other cities, and what we found was that the alarm companies don't want to be dropped by their customers. And so they want, and if a customer is subject to a false alarm penalty, then they are likely to change false alarm or alarm companies. So I think the alarm companies want to have their equipment functioning correctly for fear of losing their clientele. So from what we did address that as we were drafting the ordinance, and the other cities who have ordinances similar to ours have found that the alarm companies become particularly careful of their malfunctioning alarms and fix them rather rapidly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Anyone else who would like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance?
Well, as I said, I just want to make sure I understand this. So if a person never gets word that they're supposed to register, they never got a letter, they weren't contacted personally, you are going to charge them $25 fine if you go out on a false alarm, which to me, the thing to do would be, if they said, I didn't know I had to register, would be to say, well, ma'am, you have 5 days to register, but not fine them for something they didn't know. I think they'll have an issue with that. I think they'll think, why didn't the security company or the police department tell me? And of course, you couldn't, you didn't know.
That's part of the,
Yeah.
we do have, we're working.
But they have to go
on
through appeal. A
PR
lot of people are not
thing.
gonna
We're
do that.
Try to get some more word out on it, and we're also working with the alarm industry to contact their customers to make them aware of it.
Okay, well, that's what I was wanting
Yes.
just to see,
Yes.
if you would do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, from the general public perspective, are there any other comments as to in support of or opposition to passage of this ordinance? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and is there a motion for approval of this ordinance on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Have
Mr.
a
Mayor.
motion and a second. Discussion, Councilman Brooks.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know if I'm out of order now, but I would like to make a motion that there be no civil penalties in the ordinance, and that it simply be an educational ordinance to inform the public, but that the language mandating civil penalties for false alarms be redacted from the ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So your motion would be in the form of an amendment. I'll accept that amendment and vote on it first, if we'd like. So you're proposing an amendment to where there'd be no civil penalty, period?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment? Not hearing a second, that amendment fails. We're back on the original motion, of which we have a motion and a second. Future additional discussion? If not, council, please vote.
And that motion passed, 8 members in favor, 1 against.
Okay, thank you. Now we can jump over to second reading. I think item 8 is consideration of a beer ordinance revision that requires off-site consumption. Beer permit applicants to receive responsible beverage service training.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion, second, discussion. Council, please vote.
And the motion passes, 8 members in favor, 1 abstaining.
Is Dr. Lattimore still here? If there's no objection to council, I know Dr. Lattimore is at Lambeth, and we've asked him to bring an update to council. If there's no objection, can we move him up and let him be on his way? And Dr. Lattimore, certainly condolences on behalf of the council for the passing of your mother, and we appreciate you being here this morning. I know you have to leave. So, again, thank you for being here, and if you go ahead with an update on University of Memphis at Lambeth campus.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It was a year tomorrow that we actually took over the campus, and we appreciate so much your help this year and how you've helped us get involved with the community and get the campus up and looking well. You've done a lot to help us, particularly in the public areas where you've cut some tree limbs and helped us with some of the sidewalk problems we've had on the public streets. We appreciate that. We appreciate all your help. Really, we thought it would be a win-win situation here, and I think we found that to be true. Winning for us in the sense of being able to provide more education for West Tennesseans at a public university, and another way to win for the city, of course, the stabilization of the neighborhood and keeping that campus in good shape. And so we're pleased to be here. We really appreciate all your help. I should tell you that we just signed a new lease with the Jackson Madison school system for $1 a year for them to use the athletic fields. I think one of the high schools is going to use the football field for their home stadium this year, and certainly our soccer fields and tennis courts and that kind of thing have been used already. So we do think it's a good thing for the city, but we also think it's a good thing for West Tennessee and our being able to provide this education. We're only 3 weeks away from school starting. We don't have any history here in terms of how many students actually will be here. We've admitted about, I think, somewhere around 600 new students, and we think we will have somewhere between 600 and 700 students that are on campus. That's not all full-time. Some are full and some are part-time. But we are looking forward to a good group, about twice the number we had last fall. And we see a lot of enthusiasm. We're continuing to talk to high schools and students all across this West Tennessee area. We have a transfer orientation day still on Wednesday and a freshman orientation this Thursday. So we're still enrolling students and that kind of thing, but we have 600 already enrolled. So we're looking for a good group. We have this year been emphasizing education, business, and nursing. Those are the 3 areas that the president particularly wanted to emphasize. We've added some programs there. We're adding actually a doctoral cohort in education in the leadership area for West Tennessee school superintendent, or people that would like to become either school superintendents or other major administrators. That's a doctoral cohort that's beginning this year. We're adding some nursing programs. We're doing the transfer program now. We're doing the RN to BSN, as well as our traditional beginning with freshman year going to the BSN. So that's moving that way. In business, we've added accounting as a major for this next year. We also have added several new faculty for next year, particularly in criminal justice, communication. We have math, we have education, a couple of people in nursing. So we're adding faculty to the campus. We're adding professional programs in criminal justice, social work, communication, public relations, and the electronic or entertainment music industry. So we're continuing to grow programs. We hope they'll continue to grow. We hope to do a lot more events this year for the community. We've done some concerts. We've done some activities there, open activities for the community. We hope we can continue to do that. We have several already scheduled, and we'd like for you to be able to participate, if you will, in those events. We've done a good bit of construction around the campus. We've fixed our internal sidewalks. We've painted all the outsides of all the buildings. We've redone the first floor of Hyde Hall for our nursing labs, which they will begin using in about 2 weeks. We've put in new computer labs, 2 new video conferencing rooms. We're doing several things to make ADA compliant in some of the buildings that we're not. We still have some problems with some of those. We don't have elevators in the library. We don't have an elevator in the student center. So those are things that are in the future that we will need to do. But we think that we're on the right track, and we appreciate all your help. I guess I read a comment by a president of a small school in St. Louis, and she said her job was 3 things. 1, absorb chaos, give back give back calm, and provide hope. And I think that's, you've helped me provide hope to these people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lattimore. We're looking forward to getting underway on the fall semester there at the University of Memphis at Lambda. Go back to item 1 under new business, and that is a recommendation from the Liquor District Zoning Committee regarding liquor districts. I think Councilman Wallace headed that up.
Thank you, Mayor. The Liquor District met. The liquor zones in the city have changed over the years due to annexations of the city. And it was brought to the city council's attention that the zones were becoming somewhat skewed, some zones becoming larger than the others. And so a committee was appointed to review that. I'd like to thank my fellow councilman, Councilman Conger and Councilman Dodd, for serving on that committee and helping us to make these determinations. The Liquor Zoning Committee met quite a few times and reviewed the liquor zones for the city, the reasons to even have liquor zones, whether we needed to continue to have them, whether things should be changed. During those meetings, we took public comments from a variety of people, mostly the liquor store owners, which are the ones that are actually affected by the liquor zoning, because the zoning makes a determination on where a liquor store is located inside the city limits. Doesn't make any difference where you live. You can buy liquor wherever you want to, but the zones are just, affect the liquor store owners. So those are the ones that were primarily concerned with it, and then we met with and got their input. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Liquor Zoning Committee voted to make 3 recommendations to the city council. One was to leave the liquor district boundary lines where they are as currently drawn. The second was to allow the planning department to be allowed to make future determinations on the zone lines based on annexations. And the annexation would go to wherever the closest liquor zone currently was. That would be added to that liquor zone. And then if there's any question whether there's annexation involved too, then they would be the ones that make that determination. And lastly, we wanted to encourage the Jackson Wine and Spirit Retailers Association to periodically review the liquor zone lines and make any recommendations they may have back to the council for any changes they felt that we needed to have. And then I'd like to call on Stan to explain the rationale behind the wording on the change then.
The Liquor District Committee met several different times, and in working through the Liquor District maps and the changes that have occurred over time, it became clear that while the code gave us the ability to amend, it wasn't clear how that amendment process was done. So Louis Cobb, our city attorney, felt like it would be better if we clarified how that amendment process was done. We have been doing it like the wording that Councilman Wallace read you, that we've been amending the map based on annexations, and we put those areas into the district that they're closest to, just like we would your city council district if we had annexations. We followed that same procedure, but it wasn't laid out in the code. So our city attorney recommended that we put that language in there so that it was clear. Also, when it became a situation where 2 districts were very close to it, and you had to decide what area went into which one, we would make that decision also, and keep your map up to date for you. So that's the language you have here. If you vote to accept the recommendations of the committee, we would prepare an ordinance and bring that back to you next month to amend the city code.
How would that ordinance basically change other, just annexation?
It adds a section in under the liquor districts that's defined in the code, in the city code. It would just add a section and renumber, and the added section would have the process by which, when annexation occurs, the planning department will amend the map to include those annexed areas into the district that they're closest to.
Okay. Or contiguous to.
Yes,
Yeah.
and whatever they're contiguous to. And if it's close to 2, then we'd make a determination which area goes into what. And then thirdly, it add the language of the recommendation that Councilman Wallace read, that it leaves the decision of whether we need to change the districts themselves. It leaves that kind of up to the Wine and Spirits Retailers Association to determine when it's best to do that, because the word we kept getting from not all, but the majority of them is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Yeah. So they felt it was good to stay with what we had.
Yeah, and the wording, Mayor, is only to encourage them to bring to us that, I mean, they wouldn't be the ones that make the determination on whether it would still be the city council to make the determination if the line should be changed.
That's what I wanted to clarify, that they wouldn't drive that.
No,
they
it
would
just,
be
it just gives them
consulted.
the ability to make recommendations to you as a city council when they felt like changes needed to be made. But again, the decision will always rest with this body.
I have a question,
Okay,
if I may.
yeah, sure, Councilman.
Stan, this ordinance was really originally put into effect in 1972. Just as background, what's the purpose of a liquor district?
You're asking a $64,000
Were you
question.
born then?
I was born, yes. I wasn't thinking much about liquor then, as you know, alcohol by the drink in this area of the South has always been sort of a contentious issue and had differing opinions on whether it was a good thing or a bad thing or whatever in the case of liquor. And so when they decided to create the districts, that was the local choice of method for determining how many liquor stores they would have. It wasn't required that they do it that way. They could have said you can have 12 and we don't care where they are, or you could have had 6 or 8 or whatever number. But when this was created, that was what was determined the best method for determining liquor stores in Jackson, and that's the way it's remained. And so the only changes that have really been made to the districts have been through annexation as the city has grown. The districts themselves, in terms of how many you can have per district, hasn't changed, and the lines that divide these districts really hasn't changed that much. So it wasn't a mandate that we follow this pattern. That was the pattern that was agreed upon and selected.
And I know that we do have a recommendation from the committee and Councilman Wallace, and we appreciate their hard work. And obviously they feel, but do you feel that 50 years later, it's still the way we need to do it?
Well, again, you're asking me a $64,000 question.
So that's why you get paid.
Yeah, I know. I personally, and or professionally, I should say, not personally, but professionally, I believe that, in terms of liquor stores, I think the general public doesn't know where those lines are. I mean, they're basically going to, if they are in need of liquor, they're going to go to either their favorite place or their place they're closest to, and the lines really don't have a bearing on most people. It's really a bearing to the liquor store owners more than anybody. And the liquor store owners are real sensitive to where the district lines are, because that determines their market, kind of, and where they can put a store in the future if they want to move it. And that's why some of the district owners felt their districts, when it was formed, didn't give as much opportunity as other districts that were created. And so there was some within that group that wanted to see them changed or modified. Of course, there was a majority of store owners that felt they had invested the money, and they said, when we invested our money, we bought into this liquor store knowing what the boundaries were, and we paid a premium for knowing that we had this area as a part of our territory, that we could build a store, relocate a store, do whatever, as long as we kept 2 stores per district. So, I heard both sides of the argument in these meetings, and I have to say the committee did a wonderful job. It wasn't a slam bam kind of thing. They met several times listening, and it wasn't quick meetings. They gave the liquor store owners a long time to discuss it and talk among themselves. And the majority, at least the majority opinions, seem to be we don't really have a problem. Everybody knows what they got, and they're happy with it. But there were some that was not a majority, but were clearly a segment of the owners that felt like that some adjustments were needed. When the mayor asked me to look at it, we looked at it geographically, and all we saw was that District 5 was where most of the annexations had occurred and was getting much larger geographically, which means it had a larger, per se, market. But again, then you have to look at the area that's within 5, and a lot of it's residential where you wouldn't have opportunities for commercial stores anyway. So, you know, we went through all that, and I would say there is a point at which time in the future that this probably needs to be looked at. The thinking now is it's not that time, but I think at some time in the future it might be worthwhile to look at the districts and evaluate them again, and go through the process of you know, reforming those based on what makes sense. But again, like I said, the majority consensus right now, the liquor store owners, who are the ones that are most directly affected by these lines, felt that it was not this time.
My last question is relative. I don't know if this should be directed to the committee or Stan, but how many other cities in the state of Tennessee have an ordinance like this on book?
Well, I know we talked about at least one, Dyersburg, because Dyersburg recently had a case where their districts were formed. Again, a lot of these ordinances and codes were formed way back in time, and so Dyersburg had one that said that liquor stores had to be in a certain district. All of them had to locate in this one district because it needed to be near fire protection because alcohol was flammable.
Okay.
And so you can understand how far back that language goes.
Okay. Get the horse and buggies in there.
Back to the moonshine days. I don't know, Prohibition. But somebody challenged that because, of course, Dyersburg has grown over the years, just like we have. They had new commercial areas, bypass, you know, that grew up a commercial area, and now they wanted to locate a store where the other retail activity was now. And the city of Dyersburg said, no, our district, our regulations say you have to be in this one, and basically everybody was in that one, and the stores felt it was also, and you know, sort of bad for competition. It put us all in the same, you know, same general area, and so it didn't give us the ability to have any competition in terms of areas. So they said no, it was challenged, and it was overturned, and they were allowed to locate outside that district. So. Cities do have district regulations, just like us. They may vary in some aspects, but a lot of cities don't. They just let the market dictate.
Right, and that's the other side of the argument, that the market would dictate that. I realize that you need to regulate.
And in most cases, it does. Now, you know, that's the thing that has been talked about. Is I know there have been a push for some time to, just like it was with beer sales, to allow the Walgreens and places like that to sell liquor, like you do in other states or other places. And if that were ever to happen, of course, that would change the whole dynamic of liquor sales. And at that time, it might be good to reevaluate where we are. But again, I think the general consensus, and the committee can correct me if I'm wrong, of the people that were involved, which were directly affected, felt that this was not the time to make any changes.
Thank you, Stan, and I want to commend the committee on their hard work. Thank you very much.
Yeah, certainly, this was not an easy chore, and I also want to commend Councilman Wallace, Councilman Dodd, and Councilman Conger, because it was an ongoing process. It was a work in progress, and a lot of time and a lot of effort was spent on this issue, and I appreciate their doing their due diligence. We have a motion or a recommendation from the committee which will serve as a motion itself, and I think in this case, all we need is a second, and see if there's any discussion, and we'll be awaiting an ordinance on first reading at either a next meeting or someone down the line.
Yes, sir. Any
additional discussion with council? If not, council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Item 2 under new business is do we have, yes, we do. Yes, we do. Come on up. Yeah, good. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't say it. That's okay. That's all right. We appreciate you coming out. Sure.
My name is Alan Salee, and I own Hollywood Liquors. I have a few points I want to bring up to the city council. Stan mentioned some of the things that I had to ask. One is, why do we have the liquor zones? I guess that was basically answered. Not to my satisfaction, but it was answered. Secondly, they were established in 1972. Back then, the city was centered around downtown Jackson. The retail growth has now moved from the downtown area out north, as has residential growth. The question to you guys, as city council members, why does the city of Jackson have zones that limit retail competition in the wine and spirits industry? The city of Jackson does not limit or regulate any other retail industry segment. Beer, cigarettes, restaurant, or bars, all of these retail businesses sell alcohol. They all have competition and are able to survive. You are seeing a big push for retail space being added to the Columns and Ballpark area and other retail segments. This is because the owners of these businesses want to be where the people eat, shop, and live. The businesses are moving from an area that, these businesses are moving from an area that has limited or affected their bottom line. If anybody was to open a business, they would, and were forced to open a business in an area that has a declining population or a declining available discretionary income, you probably would not open that business. Hollywood Liquors has nowhere to go in our zone. We've researched, we've looked. I do not see any annexation in my area or my zone that's going to help my store in the near future. The city of Dyersburg, which I'm the one who brought that up in the meeting, had 5 liquor stores, and they all were within the fire zone. Tidwell City Liquors sued the city and won, case number 96C-426. Their attorney believed the city had the right to limit the licenses, but not the location. There is some precedent that the ordinance and rules from the old way of doing business do change to better the city and the business environment. I've checked with several cities similar to the size of Jackson. I've not been able to find one that has retail liquor zones. I've also talked to the following store owners for their input. I talked to a gentleman in Clarksville, a gentleman in Smyrna, and a store owner in Murfreesboro. All of them mentioned that competition has been good for their business. As Stan mentioned as well, competition is good for business. In closing, I know the city council wants to be fair to all store owners. I'm asking for the zones to be done away with, not so I can move on top of another store, but so that I can survive in an open market as all business owners have the right to do. There are ways to keep us from moving on top of each other. Other cities have ordinances limiting how close you can be to another store. Obviously, the vote has been unanimous, but I do appreciate the time, and I do think it's time that we look at these zones that were established in 1971 and the reasons why they were established. Jackson is a retail leader in growth, and it should not limit the retail growth in the wine and spirits industry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Slay. Thank you. Going back to item 2, under new business, is consideration of a resolution condemning violence in the city of Jackson, and that's proposed by Councilman Harvey Buchanan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the chairman, city council, those who are present, those who will be listening in TV land, we have a serious problem and an urgent problem in our community. This resolution is to condemn violence in the city of Jackson, Tennessee. Our proaction has been nearly none. Now we have to react. We need help in this city to clean it up with respect to law enforcement. If we have to call in the TBI, the FBI, special forces, whatever we have to do, let us clean this city up. If you don't, I'm going to submit to you that all hell is going to break loose. To the predators of criminal activities, we're urging you to put your guns down, have peace in the streets. you're gonna kill someone who is innocent, is not in your shooting way. You're gonna kill somebody's grandchild. You're gonna kill somebody's child. You're gonna kill somebody's granddaughter. You're gonna kill somebody's grandparents. Put your guns down. Settle your differences another way. Please let there be peace in the street. You know, I don't agree with the mayor on everything, but I'm not gonna shoot him. This resolution is a call for action. It's a call for action. And if we as citizens of Jackson, Tennessee don't use the sense of urgency, we're paying for it now. But Lordy, Lordy, we're gonna pay for it much deeper. The resolution to condemn violence in the city of Jackson, Tennessee. Whereas it is a tragic fact that the ugly face of violence has made its presence throughout our nation and in our community. And whereas it is unacceptable that criminal behavior and violence continue to visit our citizenry. Whereas the combined efforts of government, private institutions, and the general community can work together to make a positive difference in the well-being and safety of our citizens. Whereas all citizens are entitled to live, work, and play in a safe environment. And whereas it is the resolve of this government to fight against violence in all of its forms and hold accountable those establishments and individuals that breed violence. Now therefore be it resolved that this mayor and this city council of the city of Jackson, Tennessee, meeting in a regular session on August 7, 2012, desire to formally adopt the resolution to condemn the presence of violence in our community. This resolution shall take effect upon its adoption, the public welfare requirement. We pray and we hope that the crime will decrease in our city. It affects everything. There is a proactive side and there is a reactive side. We haven't been proactive, now we got to react, and we got to do it expediently and urgently. Let's take our city back. We're about to lose it. Let's take it back where youngsters can walk and play in the street when they want to, where older citizens can sit on their porches. At this moment in time, we're scared to death. Let's take it back where our shopping centers will be safe. Let's take our city back where those youngsters returning to college will be in a safe environment, where our future generations can say that Jackson, Tennessee is the place to be. Let's take it back, because if we don't, we're paying for it now, and if you think this is something, you just wait and see. Children are dying. Mothers and families are crying. Those of you who say that we shouldn't be nosy neighbors, you're wrong. You better tell it. Could be your son, could be your daughter, could be my son, could be my daughter next time. If we want to have peace in the streets, we better do it. And to our law enforcement agency, if we need help to clean up this city, let's get help. This city needs to be cleaned up with respect to criminal activity. I redress.
Thank you, Councilman Buchanan. I think we're all in agreement with that. And I can assume that you move that the resolution be adopted. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Moving down to item 4, under new business.
Mayor,
Huh?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
I'd like to commend Councilman Buchanan
My employment, I'm a supervisor at the criminal justice complex here in Jackson, Madison County. And the way it's looking nowadays, we're not gonna be able to build enough jails. And he's talking about the cost. Believe me, there is a heavy cost on Jackson, Madison County on these jails. We don't have enough room sometimes to put them all. And, it's gonna cost you out of your pocketbooks if we don't do something to curb this. And, what it takes everybody working together, and law enforcement can't do it by themselves. Law enforcement definitely can't do it by themselves. They've got to have help, they've got to have comments from people, or these people will never be found. And mostly, it involves drugs and alcohol. And that's how it gets started. It's mainly, we've got all different kinds of drugs here in Jackson, Madison County, and gangs. And people need to start talking, they need to start helping each other. So I want to commend you, Councilman Buchanan, for this resolution.
Thank you, Councilman Cisco. Item 4 is consideration of a consulting contract for self-funded plans. Ms. White?
We sent out 7 bids, placed this item on the internet, we put it in the Jackson Sun, and we followed up with phone calls to our 7 bidders, and we only received 1 bid, and it was from Taylor & Sons for a monthly fee of $1,666.67. We have Stacy Stone here with Risk Management, and if you've got any questions about this self-funded plan, she would be more than happy to answer those for you.
Any questions of Ms. White or Stacy? Sure. Go ahead, Councilman.
On the contract where we're just doing a monthly amount, did we consider the possibility of just doing that on a contract basis as needed and have them charge us an hourly fee?
No, we did not.
Would that be feasible to do that, and would that considerably save the city money?
I'm not exactly sure. I guess we would have to look at how many hours, I guess, we would need him for and what he would charge for those hours. Right now, we just pick up the phone and call him when we need him, and
Okay.
he's always been great to come.
This contract's for a year's timeframe?
It's a 1-year contract with 4 1-year options to renew.
Okay. I'd like for us to look at that for next year, maybe not this year, obviously, we've got the contract up and running, but to see whether it would be more cost-effective for the city to just hire them on a, as-needed hourly basis.
Okay.
Any other comments? Council?
Move to approve.
If not, thank you. There's a motion for approval. Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 5 is consideration of a contract for various types of stone. We have rock on your agenda, but we'll use the word stone.
Okay, stone and rock, I'm not sure of the difference, but we'll go with it. We received 4 bids, and the lowest and best bid is from Tenon Contracting, and these are delivered prices. And we would like for you to approve these based upon unit pricing.
So moved.
Second. Motion, second. Discussion. Council, please vote. Item 6 is consideration of the contract. I'm sorry.
I didn't get to vote.
We was working on the liquor industry.
You're working on liquor. That's the problem, you're working on liquor.
This is water.
Councilman Brooks, are you abstaining?
No.
Okay.
Put it back over.
The vote is, Pepper, you voted?
I'm just trying to wait for everybody to get on the same page.
The vote is unanimous.
Okay, very good. Item 6 is consideration of a contract for guardrails.
We received 2 bids. The lowest and best bid is from Lou Company, and we would like for you to approve this contract for a guardrail for 1 year with 4 1-year options to renew it.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second made. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 7 is consideration of the approval of the following Sportsplex Fund write-offs. And you have them there in front of you. Accounts receivable, Burzak Paving Company, $15,000. Sparky's Pizzeria and Grill, $6,000. Total write-offs, $21,000. And I think you have an assessment of why those are being written off. Is there a motion?
I just want-
Second.
A motion and a second.
sorry.
Discussion on those?
I just want you, Mayor, to kind of make it clear that some of those businesses went under.
I thought all of them did.
All of them did, I think, right?
Well, that's not all public information.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Burzak, they did go out of business.
Mhm.
Yeah.
More than compensated, because we were paid $10,000,
Mhm.
$25,000.
Okay.
But I cannot comment.
And that's basically for signage, right? They're signs, okay. Right.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, don't we?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Okay, 8, under new business, is acceptance of streets in Shiloh Springs, sections 1, 2, and 3. Woodwinds Cove, Gateway Drive, Sharpstone Cove, Bethel Park Cove, and a portion of Zachary Lane. And I think probably it's in order for we to vote on item 8, is to rescind the action of council in June, at the June meeting, rescind that action on this particular item, then we'll simply accept a motion.
Move to rescind.
Okay, we have a motion to rescind the action in June, a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Is there a motion for the acceptance of these streets as
So moved.
indicated? We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Stan. Item 9 is budget amendments.
So we have one amendment this month, and this is for a boiler at the police department, $59,840. This is an amendment to the capital budget.
Move to approve.
Motion for
Second.
approval. Is there a second? Any discussion? Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Thank you.
And item 10 is consideration of invoices over $10,000.
So moved.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
Vote is unanimous.
There being no further business, meeting is adjourned.
Hey, Chief.